All right, what you're looking at is the back inside of a BC348. Now you'll notice this is my power supply. All right, now this power supply uses a 24 volt transformer and a 110 to 220 isolation transformer, okay? And there's a full wave bridge, there's a resistor. I've gone over this once before, but I want to show you this power supply in this video because I'm trying to prevent people from making comments. Why don't you do it this way? Why? They don't watch all my videos. They'll come in on the video and they'll make some nasty comments, and I've already done what they're telling me I should do. And it's very annoying. So this is a big project. I'm going to be using the pause. I'm going to be tying different videos together. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new style of this power supply. Don't need to do it, but I want to build a box, a chassis in here that's up in the air a little bit, and these components will be underneath. There's a space under here. There's a cavity, and by bringing this up by 1 foot, 1 inch, 1 foot, 1 inch, these parts can be inside. It's just practice for me. Okay, that's why I'm doing it. But I have to do this video in such a way that it stops the stupid comments. Okay, I've noticed in some of the other people that have channels make the same observation where people don't watch the whole video. They don't watch other videos. They just start making comments. Okay, this is not a switching supply. This is a nice, quiet, full wave rectification power supply. Okay. It's old school with modern transformers. I did a video just on this power supply. Go check it out. All right, we're going into pause mode. All right, we're back out of pause mode, and in front of you, you now see a BC454. This is a power supply. It just drops on the back. All right, if you take the cover off of it, let's see if the cover will come off today. Okay, there's the inside. This transformer, this power supply is a little bit different than the last transformer. This is a 24 volt power supply. It lights the filaments, and it backfeeds a smaller transformer with 12 volts. And out of this transformer comes 110, which goes into a full wave bridge. Okay, just wanted to show you these two power supplies in this video because I always get people that make these stupid comments like, I'm going to build this, I'm going to build it, and they never do. Okay, I don't see their videos. A lot of the pain in the ass people that make comments to me, when I click on their name, there are no videos. Okay, so I just wanted to show you those two power supplies. I have built power supplies. I built 3 of these and 2 of the other ones. All right, here's one of my supplies for a BC348, and in this case it's got the 24 volt transformer, so we don't have to rewire the radio, and then it has a 450 volt transformer center tapped, which goes into 2 diodes to capacitors. So not only have I built one with 2 modern transformers, I had built one with what I had left over, and here's underneath. Here's the terminal strip you're going to have underneath. Okay? I've shown you this in other videos, but I'm adding all this in because, oh man, it's really annoying. You see a comment in the morning, and you click on it, and it's something stupid. It's very rarely is it somebody that, well, lately I have been getting some people that thank me because I've helped them out. You know, a lot of it's the remote control helicopter. Even the formatting the camera, the card that goes in the camera, the instructions fail to tell you. They expect you to know how to do things based on owning another camera, but if you never owned another action camera, you're not going to know what to do. See, the instructions for like the remote control helicopter and the action camera expect you to have already bought one, an older helicopter or an older action camera. And if it's the first time you bought something, you're screwed. The instructions are worthless. So I'm doing this video in a little different way. Pause, control. I'm going to try tying other videos together. And all this project is showing you the next step on a BC348 power supply. All right, this is the project now. Now that we've gone through the fact that I have built power supplies before, and the whole purpose of this video is to show you how to basically build a custom case or chassis for the power supply. All right, and I'm going to tell you everything I've learned from building chassis, folding them, the whole thing, what's involved, what you're going to need. Okay, now the first thing you're going to need, and let's go into pause, I'll get the stuff together. All right, when I need to build a chassis or an aluminum box, I do it old school. I do it fairly quickly. This is an old pad. This pad has to be 30 years old. Each one of those squares, let's see if you can see the squares. Let's say you can see the squares. Each square is an 1/8 inch. So this side would be 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. And then these are the rails that mount on the bottom. They get folded. But you'll see that in the future in the video. And this basically is the same power supply as the last supply I showed you for BC348. The only difference is it's going to have it's actually a chassis. So the capacitors in that can be inside the case instead of sticking up in the air like my other ones. My other ones are fine, but I wanted to get more into making and folding aluminum, like 22 gauge. Now, you say, well, I made that. All right, now here we go. There it is. Okay, and I don't know if you can see, there's scribe lines on there for when I have to fold it in the Harbor Freight brake, bending brake. I'll show you. Now, let me tell you the honest truth. In order to lay these lines out, all right, to start off with, you're going to need a high precision ruler, okay? Not some crummy wooden ruler you got left over from school. And you measure from the bottom of the piece of aluminum. Now, when you buy a scrap piece of aluminum on eBay, you got to hope that one edge is perfectly straight. Now, what you do is you take your rule and you put the piece of metal like that. Oh boy, it's getting old. And you lay it like that, and you look for light. And if you don't see any light, this edge is straight. And you do all your measurements up from there. Now, these up and down lines, you take your square and you place it on the bottom edge of that aluminum that you know is straight. Okay, that's how it's done. Now, when you put your lines on the aluminum, you get yourself some type of a scribe. And I have one here my father made. This used to be a dental pick, and it's solid. It's solid. The new ones are hollow, but he made an edge on it, or a tip. And after I measure, I put little dimples in the aluminum. You put a dimple in. And then you take a magic marker and you mark right where you put the dimple, so you don't get confused and accidentally use a scratch mark, okay? And you would measure along the bottom of the aluminum, and you put a 1 inch hole, a 1 inch dot up here from the edge of the aluminum, 1 inch dot here, and on the other end 1 inch, and then you scribe a line using the rule that comes off this, okay? You take this rule off, and you put your scribe in the first dimple, and put this rule up against it. Then you go back and forth. You make sure. Then you lightly scribe your line over the little dimples, and you want to be centered in the dimples. And then you scribe the line harder. Okay, that's something most people don't tell you how to do it. You know, they give you a schematic, and it's up to you. But when you're working with aluminum, you really want precision measurements, because if you get this one off, the 1 inch, then this one will be off, and then that one will be off up here. Okay? And as you can see, I done it. Okay? And this video is about making this, about folding this. And this is going to be a little difficult. You know, it's got tabs this time that have to be folded in. And in some cases, I might cheat and use this. This is a seamer tool. And I can grab these ears, and instead of using the bending brake, you know, I can come, let me undo this lock part. You know, I can come in here like this and grab that ear and bend it. Okay? So when you have this tool and a bending jig, most likely you won't get trapped. You won't accidentally bend a side and now it's in the way of the next side that has to be bent. All that you have to learn by practice and by actually doing. Okay, and that's what this video is about. Now, I want to tell you, I have the Harbor Freight bending jig, okay? I sprung for that. After many years of using 2 pieces of wood and some clamps, I went for the bending jig. And I think it was like under $40. Well, anyway, bought this along the way. I also want to tell you, this is 22 gauge aluminum. You're not going to be able to cut this with a pair of scissors. You know, little pieces you can, but as you cut it, it distorts the aluminum. So in order to get a piece this nice, you have to use some type of nip, what these would call, it's a die cutting tool. And then I have this type too. Okay, now this is a nibbling tool. This is an old-fashioned Radio Shack nibbling tool, round side, and so is this. I have these tools. If you don't have nibbling tools, forget this project. You have to be able to precisionally cut the aluminum. Now, if you have someone that has a cutter, a brake cutter, aluminum workshop where they make duct work, you can do this project. And that's the problem with a lot of projects in magazines and on the internet. People seem to have a $40,000 workshop and they make a $7 item. I work with what I have. And I've always done that. Now, some of you know me as the guy that did the CNC machines, you know, 20 years ago, 23 years ago. I showed you how to make real machines that actually cut out like guitar bodies and balsa wood airplanes. They would make circuit boards. I'm the guy that came out with machines that could be built, the machine for about 200 and the electronics for about another 120, okay? And I had all kinds of problems with people because I don't know how to deal with the public. Okay, I'm just honestly showing people how to do certain things, and you have a bunch of trolls like you can't believe making your day miserable because, you know, they think they know best, but they never build anything. Okay, but I just want to tell you and show you, and then this video is basically I'm using the pause control, and then at some point the next, where I have the bending jig out, I have to stop the video, set up the bending jig, make another video, and then figure out how to attach it to this first video. That's what this is all about. And at the same time, I'm showing you what I make. Now, I had this design in my head for several days, and I love that. I just sit there and I relax, and I think about building this. Okay? Then I get this out. Now, I could go online or on my computer, and I could use AutoCAD and print it out, but I went old school because some of you don't have AutoCAD. You don't know how to draw in AutoCAD. So I'm at this level for you, okay? And then, but you're going to have some type of nibbling tools. You got to be able to cut that aluminum. See, that's the problem with a lot of things on the internet and magazines. They assume you have these $40,000 worth of tools. Now, a bending brake, a real one's $3,000, and then you got to have a shear, and that's another amount. And then there's a corner cutter, which cuts in here. Okay, it has a die, and it comes down and cuts in the. If you had to cut this in using the nibbling tool, I can tell you it took about 2 hours, and I use a little file work too. I can actually show you the part. Okay, I had to come in here with a triangular file. Am I in the frame? triangular file. It was no fun at all. Okay? You know, I can put dimensions on this and say, here, go to town. And then you go, what do you use to cut it? And then as soon as I tell you it's a nibbling tool, and where do I get one of those? And good luck now. You know, you have to go online, buy it. And how much is it going to be? Well, how much could one of those be? And then you tell them, $40, that's a lot. Yeah, it's $40 just for the tool. You may not even finish the project. That's what's wrong with a lot of things. Okay? You spend more time going off on tangents, buying stuff, and then you never get to the project, and then the tool. But it never gets used. I can tell you, this tool has been used by me and 3 other people. Okay? I've loaned this out a few times. And it's a godsend because you can come up in a hole and you can cut a square hole out. It's for chassis work. All right? And so is this. This is like a $6 item, under $6 at Radio Shack, a nibbling tool. This cut out so many speakers in cars, the holes in the back deck. Okay, now my tools got used, and that's why when someone starts on me, oh, I got this, you should do this. I've already done it. I'm 71 years old now. I'm 71, made another year, and the things you're telling me, oh, I'm going to do this. I've done it. Okay, you know, people, you should use this solderless breadboard. I got those before you even knew what one of them was. Continental Specialties. I told you, my mother wrote out a check, saw it in the magazine. I actually saw it in that tech school first. I had one of them. Built the power supply underneath it, and I was popping out TTL circuits constantly to understand them so I could repair that stuff at work. Okay? And a TTL cookbook by Don Lancaster. It was really a good book. It explained everything in real simple terms. But now, everything's getting so complicated. So you got these people buying these BC348s, and I warned you about them. They're on eBay, and some of them are really, really bad. And to be able to spot what they've done to it, what's actually wrong with it, I tried doing that. I got one person gave me a negative comment. See, that's one of the guys that thinks I'm being negative about stuff. Go look at the BC348s and really look at the pictures, and you'll see all these giant holes where they thought they were going to vent the tubes. The tubes get hot. They're supposed to. Another thing, when you vent the tubes, you're causing airflow, and it's not supposed to have airflow because it makes the oscillators drift. Okay, but in their mind, they don't know, so they drill a bunch of holes in the case. And then in their mind, well, I'm selling you a radio. I modified it. They didn't know what they were doing modifying stuff. And they made things worse. And now they want bigger money for the thing, even though it's worth even less. And then there's people that build switching supplies to go in a radio. Well, unless you really know what you're doing, you're not damaging the radio. You're producing what they call birds, or signals up and down the band from the switching supply itself. Like ICOM, companies like that, Yaesu, they know how to make a power supply and shield it and use ferrite beads and things like that. I seen your power supply. I didn't see any of that, so I know. Yeah, and you could show it picking up a ham operator, and you're in an area of the band where the whistles from your switching supply aren't bothering the radio. Okay, I know all these things. I know about regenerative radios with long wires and everything. The guy gets it, he puts it on the channel, and he's got a station that's on there, but he can't move his hand near the radio. It starts to change pitch. It starts because it's not built right. He's got the wires too long. It takes years to learn all these things, and you've got to read, and you got to learn other people's experience. So that's about it now for this part, but hopefully you see this, and another section will be hooked to it. Okay, here we go. You want to make a simple aluminum box, and you buy the Harbor Freight bending brake. I don't know how many inches, 18-inch bending brake. Bending brake, yeah, that's what it's called. Now, they tell you what it can bend, and it has to do with how long the part is, okay? let's just say it could do 18 gauge. But as the part, this is 20 gauge, as the part gets longer, there's more and more resistance to do your initial bend. All right. Now the other thing they do is they give you this long beveled piece of metal, and that's so when you bend up, there's a bevel on here, so it allows you to go into a right angle. Now you look at the picture, you look at it in the store, and you don't see these clamps. You better have these clamps on there. All right. And you better have this all lined up correctly. And there is some flexing in the unit. It's not great. All right. In your mind, you think you're going to get perfect bends. You can get some really good bends, but you really got to take your time. Now, the problem is after you bend this piece up and then turn around, bend it up, how do you get these small short end pieces? How do you get in there? Well, you can't use this. Okay. You have to use a short piece of steel that you just happen to own. Put your clamps on it and up. In other words, if they've given the person that buys this or the option to buy some of these pieces with the bevel in 1 inch, 2 inch, 4 inch, whatever, a set, you could do better boxes, okay? Or you could do boxes with this thing. Now, I've designed around it. I showed you those other power supplies. I worked around the fact that this bending brake is not that great. I made a U-shaped chassis. The other one I fudged a little bit here and a little bit there. Okay, so the first thing that's wrong is this long piece. You could use some smaller pieces. So you could get inside and bend. After you do your two sides, your long sides, you could then put a clamp, and then when you bend up, the part will actually come up. You can't do it the way it is. Once these sides are up, you go to bend it up, it won't work. You can only get up so high. Anyway, so they don't do that. The other thing too is on their literature they tell you how large a gauge of steel it can bend. Well, they don't say how big the piece is. Okay. Now, the other thing you want to do is you want to go up and see this thing in action on YouTube. And there's guys that drill a hole at each end of this, we'll call this a bar. And they put a spring under it with an adjustment. Well, this bar actually bends. It bends this way. Okay? You wouldn't think it would, but it does. Also, this part of the joint, which would be the hinge, that bends a little bit. All right? But this would only be good if the guys that drill a hole here and here and put like an adjustment on there, or a tightening, that would be good if you're doing real thin sheet metal and you're only making one bend in it. Okay? If you go anything a little bit more fancier than that, or thicker, you're going to need these clamps. You're going to need to take this bar out and use a piece of metal. But one guy does it, and then everybody else copied it, and everybody else did a video on it. But to do a box, once you bend the two longer sides first, the part that goes in here, which would be like a section of this, would have to be fit in here. So as you bend it up, and your clamp can't be in the way. You'd have to use smaller clamps. But none of that is nobody does a video. I'm doing the video. I'm telling you what you're going to run into. That's why you got to be very careful in life what you work on, because you go off on these tangents. And in this case, you go to build this box or this chassis, and it doesn't work because this bar is too long. Well, I know to use a smaller piece of steel. And they used to call them, I believe, paws. In my high school class, we had a bender and had 1 inch, might have ½ inch, 1 inch, 2 inch, 4 inch, 8 inch, then the long piece. And you could set that bender up to make boxes. Okay? Out two long edges. Then you'd move over to the other side of the bender and you do the insides. Okay? Then you had another piece, you could do the ears. I don't have that option. This is not that good. But in other words, you see this thing in a magazine, you buy it, you bring it home, you set it up, you go to use it, you realize it's really limited. And I'm telling you right now, it's really limited. It struggles with 20 gauge. Now, I'm not doing this bend on camera, okay? I'm not going to ruin a video because when it starts to slide, I start swearing, okay? And I don't want to ruin a video with my swearing. But I just want to show you, reality is different than what other people, you know, those guys, oh, all you got to do is this. Oh, yeah, they never build anything. The Joe Padners of the world. I'll actually give you a name. The guy's dead. Joe Padner. Well, what could there be to it? How hard could it be? Those people, they have these phrases. Well, how hard could it be? Oh, it shouldn't cost that much. It shouldn't take that long. They have no clue about anything. I told you once before, they don't know shit from Shinola. Now, Shinola is boot polish, okay? And the girls I worked with in the night shift in Gordos making mercury switches, if they thought you were bullshitting them at all, they would say to you, you don't know shit from Shinola. Then you had to stand there and prove yourself to them, because I had about 30 women night shift. I was 22 of my group, and then there was another floor I had to take care of. And then they moved those girls down with my girls. So let's just say I was in charge of 30 women on a night shift. And they didn't like being bullshitted, okay? They were factory women. They had been bullshitted their whole life. And I wouldn't say anything to them unless I was absolutely certain I was sure, okay? But there are people out there that put times on stuff. That should take like 2 hours at the most. They've never done any work like that. They're like supervisors. 2 hours, that's enough. Oh. And then you're on your second day on something. I don't understand why this is taking so long. But this brake, when you use it, it does work. Okay? But if you had two really good pieces of wood and some clamps and possibly a vise, you could do just as good a job. Because that's what I used to use. I sold off this wacky vise I had. And then I realized I couldn't bend stuff the way I used to. I did the L-frame on the regenerative radio with two pieces of plastic. I used a piece of PVC plastic, two pieces, some clamps, and a lot of swearing, and a rubber mallet, okay? But you buy this thing, and in your mind, it's bending. Then you get a 20 gauge piece of aluminum, which I can show you right now. This is a 20 gauge piece of aluminum. Look at this. I can bend that by hand. All right? You see how it got bent? Put it in here and see how much trouble this has doing it. I'm not doing it now. I'm going to bend this tomorrow after I've had a good night's sleep, because I've dealt with this bender before. Okay? And like I said, when these guys drill a hole on each end and they put a wing nut in it, it's laughable. I sit there laughing. And if you take real thin steel and you're just bending stuff, I guess, to weld to a car or whatever they're doing, I guess that's fine, you know. But this is aluminum. It's not tempered either. And forget the tempered stuff. I have the same gauge, 20 gauge tempered from eBay. And I guess the guy thought he was doing me a favor. He sent me some good stuff. And I did look it up, and it is aluminum. It's not stainless. This thing could not bend it. So I went and reordered from a different guy and got what I ordered originally, 20 gauge. And probably 22 would be the best for this thing, you know. And the reason I have to make a box is if I just come up, over, and down, if the radio should fall over or bump it hard, the two transformers sitting on the top of the chassis are going to shift the whole thing over and bend it, okay? You'll see that in further videos. If you're seeing this video, I finished, okay? But it is what it is. And I'm telling you, projects always have difficulties to them. I stick it out. That's why when someone tells me how simple something is, I view him as a woman, okay? Because they oh man, I don't want to really get into it, but they're Padner and other women, everything's so simple when they talk, okay? Then when they actually have to do something, you know, you see the sweat coming down their brow. Like I said, I had a night shift of women. Oh, that would take us an hour. I'm saying, I think it's going to take like 3. No, then the hour mark is coming, and they're not even halfway done, and they're sweating. And I go over and say, look, it's going to take 3 hours. Don't worry about it. You know, because some people, they just make things so simple, and they're not. Life isn't easy. Okay, I think that's it for this segment. All right, that's it. All right, as you can see, I've bent this side up, and while I'm bending the opposite side, this side now gets in the way of the clamps. Now there's a way around it. You know, I showed you that I have that seaming tool. The seaming tool. You know, once you get this side bent 75%, you use this seaming tool to fudge it in. Okay, and now I have to move these, what we call these little, what would you call them, tabs. These tabs have to be bent in, so you can bring this side up, and then I have to use a small pieces of metal inside. You know, I know I've been ranting a lot. If you watched this video it's this far, but there's a reason why I rant. Life is not easy. A lot of times you visualize something in your mind, and then when you go to do it, you find the trick or the downside, the thing that you're going to have to come up with a trick to work around it. Now in my case, I was in Harbor Freight one day and I saw these, and I had a couple pair of duckbill pliers in Jersey. I sold them. They're very unique, and this thing makes up for it, this seaming tool. But this is a simple little box, but the amount of pressure that 20 gauge aluminum puts on this bender is a lot. Okay, and it's a small box. It's not a box that's 2 foot big or 1 foot big. All right, that's what I'm warning you now. I know a lot of you bought this bending brake. It's sitting in the box in the cellar, possibly in a puddle of water. You know I make fun of people that never finish any projects, because I finish mine and I know how hard they are. And that's why when I'm explaining something, I used to be on different groups, I'm explaining something to someone, watch out for this, watch out for that. You have these guys come in that never did the job before. You can't have them present their credentials. You know, it's almost as bad as when you're at work. Some guy makes everything so easy, and then after you work there a few months, you see the guy's a total idiot. All right, that's what life is. You got people running around telling you, oh, just go buy this bending brake. Yeah, and some people just use smaller clamps. All right, but it takes clamps this big to hold that bar from shifting. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, I have smaller ones. I think they're in the frame. These basically hold it in position while I tighten these two up. Okay, it took a while to figure out how to get that bar lined up with that seam, so you can bring the bender up. Okay, and of course you can bring it up a little bit higher, but it's going to spring back. That's why this has a bevel on it. It allows you to go a little further than 90 degrees because aluminum's got a spring back. I just want to show you all this because I told you there's videos on YouTube of people that got $40,000 worth of equipment and they're building stuff that's worth $7, and they make everything look so simple. And then you start to build a project and you realize you don't have the tools. I think that's it. That's it for the segment. As you can see now, let's make sure it's recording. As you can see now, after I bent it up and this part hit the clamps have to be here. Otherwise this bar will slide. So after you get it bent, say 75%, you can then move the clamps off to the side and come at it one more time and get it at that 90-degree angle. But I was laughing to myself. I did a food run early this morning, and I'm laying in bed, and the voice in my head, it's probably going to rain tomorrow. Let's do the food run today. And I'm laying in bed going, I'm not in the mood for the food run. And part of my brain wants to lay there and go back to sleep, and the other part wants to get up and do the food run. So I gave in, got up and did the food run, and I bumped into a guy that's dying. I bumped into him a few times already, and he's still smoking. He's got lung cancer, but he's still smoking, and he goes for some type of therapy. And he doesn't have a car. He's living in a truck or something. Well, anyway, I bumped into him, and I said to him, I said, man, you look like that Jim, the guy that died that I knew. He's got the same hoodie, the same hat, the same, he's got the same walk. And I talked to him for a while, and I come home, and I bent this one direction. did a little bit of the video, bent it again now in this part, and then I had my lunch cooking, and after I do a 1 mile walk each way to Walmart and carrying all that food, my heart pounds. It always has my whole life, and I lay down for a nap, and it takes about an hour, and then my heart stops doing the marimba, and I'm fine now, all right? And I just want to tell you, as I'm getting up from my nap, I look out the window, and we have a 3-legged cat here. And the cat must have got his foot in a trap, and it chewed it off, or it got caught under a car, or whatever happened to the cat. Might have been laying in the engine of a car, and it lost a leg, and it hops. I know if I was to videotape that cat in a certain way, I'd get several million views versus my 50 that I'm going to get for this video. Because this video has been very involved. I'm doing different sections. I use the pause. Each section is going to be hooked together to create one full video. So a lot of you guys that like to see stuff being built, you'll get that. Okay? But this whole project is all about this bending jig. It's all about taking the BC348 power supply one step further for myself. Okay, so I incorporated this box type assembly or chassis type for the power supply. So the capacitors and that are underneath. So if I move this unit from one radio to another, I don't have to worry about the capacitors being charged. If you look at my other design, the capacitors are sitting up on top. If you were to reach in there to move it to take it to another radio, you could get a shock. Okay, so in my mind I said, all right, let me build this thing differently, and then I can understand the limitations of this bender. Now this is the 8th, I'm thinking of all the times I've used this bender. This is about the 8th time I've used this bender, and there's so many problems with it for the fact that that long bar isn't smaller pieces. Okay, and go look at on YouTube. There's a guy, he makes a box and he has a real bender, the type you might have had in high school, and he does a box and he's talking, and I think it might have been for a used tool company in order to sell the bender. But in other words, you know, look at those boxes. Well, that's what it's for. Now this type of bender is for people that it's made to say, well, let's design a bender that'll do bending. And then they stopped it at that point. They didn't try to put any bells or whistles on it at all. Okay? Now, this bender, I believe General Tool years ago sold a bender, and it was smaller than this. And I would look at it in the magazine, and my father would say, you know, it'd be nice to have a bender. And that was one of his catchphrases. It would be nice to have a bender. It would be nice to have a bender. And I told you I had this vise in the cellar. It was a wacky vise my father bought somewhere, and it had big jaws, and they weren't strong jaws, but they were like a big duckbill pliers, and you could bend different things in it. All right, and that's what I would use that. Sometimes I'd take 2 blocks of wood, put it in the vise, and then use another piece of wood to coax the piece of metal to bend. Okay, and I can't believe how strong 20 gauge aluminum is when you try to put sharp bends into it. And I'm talking, you know, you can see this is a pretty sharp bend. I won't say this is going to be the best box in the world, but it's not a chassis for a radio. It's a chassis for a power supply that goes in a really nice radio. And I consider the BC348 to be the creme de la creme of shortwave radios. Okay, yeah, I have a closet full of ICOM R71As. I think I did a video, maybe I deleted it. I have a full closet full of those things. I know how to repair them, but I really enjoy the BC348. It's the radio I wish I had as a kid. Now, I told you I had a Philco 36-750X, whatever it was. It almost had the same features as a BC348, but it didn't have the BFO, so you could get sideband. Okay, so in other words, I did have a pretty good radio. It was one of the best Philco consoles. It was also, the chassis was in one of their cathedral type radios. Okay, but this project here is a stay busy project. That's what you're looking at. Also, to understand, use the pause control without screwing up. Then use the an editor to hook the videos together. I think that's it. All right, that's it, this section. All right, before I pull up on the lever and bend this, you notice this tab looks a little wonky right now. Let's lift this up, see if it goes. Okay. All right, so what did I learn by making this box? Okay. All right, this is the most aggressive design I've made so far. And the box is basically a Rubik's Cube of bending. You know, you can bend things just so much. A little bit of metal work. This piece still has to be bent out this way to become a foot. But what I've learned is you should use, with this bending brake, you should use 22 gauge aluminum. All right, don't use 20, it's too thick. The other thing to do on these tabs, all right, make sure I'm in the frame. You want this tab to be back the thickness of the metal. So when you bend it and you bend it up, it goes inside the box. Okay, I noticed this has been bothering me for a while. I've noticed on other people that do boxes on the internet on a real machine, the box is bigger, and as the box gets smaller, the precision of the bends has to be better, or the box will really look wonky. Okay, like I've played around with these things, and I can straighten these out with the pliers, and then some of these tapping blocks. I have a nylon tapping hammer, but this is the way it's going to sit in the radio. But project's basically done as far as the video goes. I just wanted to show you the bending jig, or the bending brake in operation, and tell you it's really limited. It would be really good if you just have to put one bend in a piece of metal. All right. I don't know what you would do it for, but as far as doing a box on this thing, this bar would be you'd need to have pieces of it in smaller sizes to go inside the box. Just go look at a bending brake on YouTube, and you'll see that there's fingers or paws, and the guy will make the part of the box on one side, then he shifts it over. He also makes a box that's probably 1.5 feet or a foot in size, and when these sides are bigger, there's more flexibility, and there's more give and take with those fingers. All right, or those little tabs. All right, that's what I've learned. I had to do this video because, you know, I told you, I just don't buy something. I buy it and I try to use it, and whenever I get a chance, I'll say, let me incorporate what I bought into the next project. And when you do projects, sometimes they go really bad, and then when they go bad, that's when you learn, and you say, well, what could I do the next time? You know, like I could make this box system using some trim channel, U-shaped trim channel 1 inch. I do have that, and I could have been done by now, but you know, I drew this all out. You know, it doesn't bother me. You know, I see other people doing this stuff, and as I'm watching, I'm like, well, why don't they do a smaller box? You know, and they don't, because if you do a smaller box, the accuracy of the bends have to be better, or when you get the box done, it'll show up on camera. If you do a big box, If the thing's off 1/8 of an inch in one spot, you won't see it. It's like when they used to show you a shave of a person's beard on television. The resolution of television years ago was so poor that the guy could still have hairs on his face and it would still look good. Okay, just put a little liquid on the face to make it look shiny. Okay, there's a lot of things in life you can really cheat on, but I've stayed with this a few days, and doing this box the way it is on this brake is a real challenge. The whole idea of a bending brake is you should be able to knock that box out in 20 minutes. Once you got the aluminum all cut and the scribe marks, 20 minutes at the most. Well, I put several hours into it, little by step, setting it up, putting the clamps on it, and the smaller clamps that would fit in better places don't have the strength. Okay, this bending brake basically is a great selling tool. You see it in the magazine, or you see it on there, and you picture in your mind what this thing will probably do, and it doesn't do it. Okay, go look at the reviews. Go look at some of the YouTube videos where the guy he's trying to bend whatever gauge steel it is on it, and you can see the whole thing flexing, and he warns you. And I had already bought the thing because I told you I had seen this bending brake. It was US General had one, and then my dad says one time we were in the store and he points to it and he says that would be a good thing to have. And up until that point, I was bending stuff with pieces of oak wood, and I wasn't having any problems. But oak is very strong, and especially if you have 22 gauge aluminum, which would probably be a kick plate. Kick plates for the bottom of the door. I used to be able to get them for like $4. I had a hardware store across the street from my house. If I needed a piece of aluminum, I'd run across the street, I'd buy a kick plate. Then for some reason, kick plates went up in price. I mean, way up. They went up to about $8. The next jump was 12, and after that, I didn't buy them anymore. But that was my source of aluminum sheets. And then, I had a scrapyard near me, and I went there one time, and this guy gave me a bunch of scrap because aluminum was way down, and he just sold me a bunch of scrap. And I went through that because I bought that. I showed you that tool, that nibbling tool. I was able to I made brackets, I made all kinds of stuff. And eventually my projects come apart, and some of the stuff I save, and a lot of it just goes in the garbage. But I think that's it for this project. This project has to do with working with the pause control, and then I'm going to try to tie a bunch of these videos together, and I think that's it. All right, that's it.